I'm 19 and I think I just found out my mom's secret boyfriend might actually be my ex. It sounds insane, I know. And I really hope I'm wrong. I'd love nothing more than to chalk this up to a wild imagination or one too many crime podcasts. But the more I piece it together, the more everything starts to make this horrifying kind of sense. I haven't told anyone yet, because I know how this sounds, like something out of a soap opera. But I need to get it out, somewhere, somehow. This all started 3 weeks ago, on a totally normal Thursday. I came home from my evening class to find my mom acting weird. And when I say weird, I mean she practically jumped out of her skin when I walked into the kitchen. She slammed her phone screen down like I was about to see nuclear codes or something. That alone wouldn't have been a huge deal, she's a private person, but it was the look on her face that got me. Embarrassed, flushed, like a teenager who got caught texting her crush during class. It's just me and my mom living together now. My dad passed away when I was 12, and it's been us ever since. We're not exactly best friends, but we're close. I thought I knew everything there was to know about her. But that night, something shifted. She told me she was talking to a new friend, said it in this soft, shy tone I'd never heard before. Then she smiled at her phone again and wandered off into her room. I thought it was kind of sweet, honestly. She hadn't dated since Dad died. If she was finally seeing someone, good for her. But then the strange stuff started. First, she changed her phone passcode. Then she suddenly had these errands to run on random evenings. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and hear the front door click. She never told me where she was going, just said, "I'll be back soon." I asked her once if she was seeing someone, and she laughed, literally laughed, and said, "Don't be silly." Except, I wasn't being silly. Because 5 days ago, I was out getting coffee with my friend Beth, and while we were waiting in line, I saw him. Sitting 2 tables away, laughing into his phone, looking way too familiar. My ex, Ethan. We only dated for 4 months, nothing super deep, but it ended weird. Like, he ghosted me out of nowhere. We'd been texting one night and making plans to go see a movie the next day. Then, nothing. No replies. Vanished. He unmatched me from everything and even blocked me on Instagram. That was almost 8 months ago. I tried to move on. But seeing him again stirred something. The worst part? He looked up, locked eyes with me, then immediately looked away like I was a complete stranger. Beth saw it too. She whispered, "Isn't that your ex?" And I nodded, confused and a little nauseous. But what happened next is what set this whole thing in motion. As we walked out, I glanced back at him again. And he was texting. Smiling. That same smile I saw on my mom's face a week earlier. I wish that's where it ended, but it gets worse. So much worse. The next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The way Ethan smiled into his phone, how quickly he looked away when he saw me. That tight, fake grin. And the way my mom had been acting lately, nervous, distracted, secretive. It was like my brain didn't want to connect the dots, but they were already forming this awful picture on their own. I told myself I was overthinking. That there was no way in hell my ex, who I dated less than a year ago, would somehow end up involved with my mom. I mean, how would they even meet? What would they talk about? It made no sense. Still, I couldn't let it go. So I did something I'm not proud of. That afternoon, while she was in the shower, I went into her room. I know. It felt wrong. But the curiosity had turned into full-on anxiety. I found her phone on the nightstand, screen up this time, no passcode needed. Maybe she forgot to lock it. I didn't even know what I was looking for. I went to her messages first, scrolled past the group chat with her coworkers, a thread with our neighbors, and then I saw it. A contact named E. Just E. My stomach dropped. I tapped on it. The messages weren't explicit, but they weren't exactly platonic either. There were heart emojis. Little inside jokes. A message from him that said, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Been thinking about your smile all day." And my mom's reply, "Your trouble." But I like it. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I scrolled up. They'd been talking for over a month. I scanned more of the texts, trying to find something, anything, that would prove this wasn't who I thought it was. Maybe it was just someone else with the same name, right? Then I found the picture. A mirror selfie he'd sent her 2 weeks ago. Shirtless. Same tattoo on his collarbone. Same room I used to sleep in when we stayed over at his aunt's cabin. It was him. Ethan. My ex messaging my mom. Telling her he missed her. Suddenly, everything felt like it tilted sideways. I sat down on the edge of her bed, holding her phone like it was radioactive. I felt sick, humiliated, angry, betrayed. But mostly, I felt crazy. Because how do you even begin to confront something like this? She got out of the shower a few minutes later, and I barely made it back to my room in time. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured him, her, laughing, texting, meeting up in secret while I sat home thinking she was at the grocery store or visiting a friend. The worst part is, I still haven't confronted her. Not yet. But I'm going to. Because last night, I saw a notification pop up on her phone while she was doing dishes. A text for me. It said, "Does she know yet?" That message, "Does she know yet?" rattled around in my head all night like a live wire. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't sit still. I just kept staring at the ceiling, hearing those 4 words again and again. Does she know yet? I knew he meant me. Ethan was asking my mom if I knew about them. Which means this wasn't just some fling or awkward mistake. They were keeping it from me on purpose. Like they knew it was messed up and were doing it anyway. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I tried to think of every possible explanation. Maybe he didn't realize she was my mom? Maybe she didn't know who he was? But I kept circling back to the same thing. There's no way they didn't know. My mom had seen pictures of Ethan before. I'd shown her once or twice when we were dating. She even made a joke about how baby-faced he looked. And Ethan? He met her once. It was brief, but it happened. He dropped me off at the house once after a date, and she came out to say hi. They shook hands. So unless they both had the memory of a goldfish, they knew. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to get some kind of proof, some way to know how deep this went. So I came up with a plan. I know how this makes me sound, but at this point I felt like I was losing my mind, and it was the only thing keeping me grounded. The next morning, I told my mom I had to go to the library for a group project. She nodded, barely looking up from her phone, smiling to herself as she typed. I didn't go to the library. Instead, I went back home an hour later and let myself in quietly through the back door. I stood in the hallway for a minute, trying to hear if anyone was inside. And that's when I heard it. Laughter. A man's voice. His voice, coming from the kitchen. I stood there frozen, my heart pounding so loud I thought it would give me away. Then I heard her giggle. Giggle. Like some teenager sneaking around behind her parents' back. Then the clink of plates. More laughing. I walked to the edge of the hallway and peeked into the kitchen. And there he was. Ethan. Standing in my kitchen, drinking coffee out of my favorite mug, shirt untucked, laughing like he lived there. And my mom? She was making pancakes. Like this was normal. Like this was okay. They hadn't seen me yet. I should have walked in. Said something. Screamed. But instead, I took out my phone, snapped a picture, and walked back out the door. I've never felt more invisible in my entire life. I stared at that photo for what felt like an hour. Him, grinning like nothing was wrong. Her, flipping pancakes in the kitchen I grew up in, like she was playing house with someone who once told me he wasn't ready for commitment. I wanted to throw up. Or scream. Or both. Instead, I sat in the park for 2 hours trying to breathe. That photo burned a hole in my phone, but I couldn't bring myself to send it to anyone. I couldn't tell Beth. Couldn't tell my cousin. How do you even start a sentence like that? Hey, just found out my mom's dating my ex. The one who ghosted me after 4 months and vanished like a coward. But I wasn't just hurt. I was humiliated. And I hadn't even gotten to the worst part yet. When I finally came home, several hours later, the house was quiet. I could still smell syrup in the air. A couple of dishes were drying on the rack. My mom was in her room, door slightly open, humming while folding laundry. Like it was just another regular Saturday. I don't know what came over me, but I walked in and asked her who he was. She froze for half a second. Barely noticeable. Then smiled. Smiled. Said he was just someone she'd been seeing. I asked if she was serious. She nodded like she was sharing a cute little secret with me. Told me it was nothing heavy yet, but that she really liked him. That he was sweet and funny and younger than she expected to go for, but age is just a number. I asked how they met. She said Tinder. That's when my stomach flipped. Ethan used Tinder. That's how we met, too. I remember the profile, blue flannel, dog in the background, caption said, not here for long, but maybe for the right one. I wanted to scream right then. I wanted to show her the picture I took and shout, he's my ex. That's who he is. The guy who ghosted your daughter 8 months ago. But I didn't. Because I still needed to know one thing. Did she know? Or had he kept that part from her? So instead of blowing up, I said something I never thought I'd say. I asked if she had a picture of him. And without hesitation, she said yes. She reached for her phone, scrolled for a second, then turned the screen to me. And there he was. Ethan. Smiling. Arm around her. Both of them in a restaurant I'd been to with him a year ago. That confirmed it. She knew. And that smile? It wasn't love. It was pride. Like she'd won something. That smile did something to me. It snapped whatever was left of my denial clean in half. I remember staring at her phone, at that picture of the two of them wrapped up like some cozy couple, and something inside me just froze. She was looking at me like she expected me to say or ask when I'd get to meet him, like this wasn't the most disturbing betrayal of my life. I handed her the phone back without a word and walked out of the room. She didn't follow. I sat in my own room for the rest of the day, door shut, blinds closed, phone on silent. I didn't eat, didn't talk to anyone. I just kept staring at the ceiling, replaying all of it. The way Ethan used to kiss my forehead when he thought I was asleep. The way he disappeared without a word. And now this? In my house? With my mom? And she knew. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't some weird coincidence. She had looked at that man, recognized him, and still decided to date him anyway. I started wondering when it started. Had they matched on Tinder before or after he ghosted me? Had she seen his face and chosen not to care? Was she hoping I wouldn't notice? Or worse, was she doing it on purpose? That night, I scrolled all the way back in my own texts, to when Ethan and I were still talking. I found the last thing he ever said to me, movie night tomorrow? I'll bring snacks, smiley face. That was the night he disappeared. And now here he was. In my mother's life. In my mother's bedroom. I didn't sleep again that night. And the next morning? She had the nerve to leave a cup of coffee outside my door. Like she was trying to smooth it over before anything had even been said. But the moment I opened my door to throw the cup away, I noticed something even worse. There was a second mug sitting on the kitchen table. His favorite. The one I got him for Valentine's Day. Still half full. Still warm. He hadn't just visited that morning. He had spent the night. I stared at that mug like it had teeth. My fingers curled into fists, and I could feel this rage bubbling up, hot and tight in my chest. He slept here. Not just came over, not just stayed late. No. He spent the night. In this house. In my mother's room. Using the mug I gave him when we were still a thing. Every part of me wanted to storm into her room and throw it against the wall. Not the mug. The truth. The hurt. The absolute disgust I was drowning in. But I didn't. Not yet. Because deep down, something about all this still didn't make sense. Ethan was never bold like that. He wasn't the kind of guy who could sit across from my mother at a dinner table without sweating. He used to get nervous just meeting my friends. He was awkward. Private. Always had one foot out the door. So how was he suddenly smooth enough to win over her? Unless he already had a plan. And then it hit me. What if this isn't even about love? What if it never was? I went back into my room and locked the door. Opened my laptop and started digging. Old photos. Texts. DMs, voice memos. I was looking for anything that would help me understand how this nightmare even started. Then I remembered something. Back when we were dating, Ethan used to ask a lot of weird questions about my family. Innocent enough on the surface, how much money my mom made, if my dad left behind life insurance, whether our house was fully paid off. I thought he was just making conversation. Or maybe worried about me long term. Now, it sounded like a checklist. So I kept digging. And that's when I found it. An old email. One I'd forgotten about. He'd forwarded me a job posting for some financial internship, told me I should apply for it. But when I opened the email thread again, I noticed something weird. He didn't send it from his usual Gmail. It was from a different address. A business email. His full name, attached to a marketing agency. The name sounded familiar. Because it was the same agency my mom once worked with 2 years ago when she was trying to relaunch her art studio. And suddenly, it all clicked. Ethan didn't randomly meet my mom on Tinder. He already knew who she was. He targeted her. And now? He was living in our house, dating my mom, drinking out of the mug I gave him, sleeping under our roof like nothing ever happened. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a setup. My hands were shaking so badly I had to close the laptop and just sit there in the dark for a while. Everything felt twisted, surreal, like I'd fallen into some nightmare that kept getting deeper the more I tried to wake up. But this wasn't some movie. This was real. My ex, had weaseled his way into my mother's life, maybe even her bank account, and she didn't see it. Or worse, maybe she did. I couldn't help but go back to that email. That marketing agency. It was the same name my mom had mentioned when she was struggling to boost her online shop a while back. She said they were too expensive and that she couldn't justify hiring them long-term. But now I was wondering, was Ethan already working for them back then? Was he watching from the sidelines, waiting for his moment? And when I became the easy access point, did he date me just to get closer? I felt sick. All of it started to look calculated. The way he ghosted me, vanished without a trace. Maybe it wasn't cold feet or commitment issues. Maybe he thought I'd served my purpose. Maybe he was done using me and ready to go after the main prize. My mom. That would explain why he had zero guilt. Why he could look me in the eye at that coffee shop and pretend I didn't exist. Because to him, I didn't. I was just a step on the staircase. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't look at my mom. I couldn't sit in the same room with her. Every time she smiled at her phone or left the house with extra makeup on, it felt like being punched in the chest. I tried to avoid her, tried to stay busy, but it didn't work. Because eventually, the moment I'd been dreading came. She asked if I wanted to meet her new boyfriend. I almost laughed. My mouth just dried up and stayed that way. I told her I was busy. She smiled like she understood, said she knew it might be weird for me, but she really wanted us to all be close. Said she had a good feeling about this one. Said he was different. I nodded and walked away before I lost it. But that night, I made a plan. If Ethan was using her, I was going to prove it. I was going to watch. Wait. Document everything. I was going to gather every receipt, every lie, every coincidence. And when I had enough, I'd show her. She'd have to believe me. Because I couldn't let her fall for a man who once kissed me goodnight, then disappeared, only to come back and play boyfriend to my own mother. I wouldn't let her be the next person he discarded. Not without a fight. The next few days were all about pretending. Pretending I was fine, pretending I didn't know, pretending I wasn't quietly collecting evidence like a detective in my own home. It was exhausting. I barely slept. I was constantly waiting for the next clue, the next slip-up. And sure enough, it came. It was a Thursday morning. My mom left early for a quick breakfast date, her words, all dolled up like she was auditioning for a rom-com. I waited 10 minutes, grabbed my bag, and followed at a distance. I know it sounds unhinged, but I needed to see it for myself. I had to know how deep it went. She met him at this quiet cafe downtown. One of those trendy spots with overpriced tea and industrial lighting. I stayed across the street, watching from a bookstore window through the reflection in the glass. And I saw it. The hug. The kiss on the cheek. The way Ethan leaned in, whispering something that made her blush like a teenager. He looked confident. Comfortable. Like this was his second home now. He held her hand across the table, smiling like the man of her dreams. But I knew better. Because earlier that morning, while she was in the shower, I'd searched her room again. I know. But I had to. And I found a receipt. Not just any receipt. It was from a jewelry store. 2 weeks old. A gold bracelet. Nearly $600. She'd written E. Blueheart in the corner of the box. I'd never seen her buy something like that for anyone, not even my dad when he was alive. She was invested. Emotionally. Financially. Which meant he was getting exactly what he wanted. And that's when the rage settled into something colder. I went back home and opened a private folder on my laptop. I'd already started saving screenshots, old messages, receipts, copies of his social profiles, before he made them private. But now, I went a step further. I emailed the marketing agency. Asked if Ethan D. still worked there. Pretended I was a potential client. Said I'd been referred by him. I expected a generic reply. Instead, I got this. Hi, thank you for your message. Ethan D. hasn't been affiliated with our firm since late last year. If he's claiming to represent us, please let us know. Best, Megan, Client Relations. He lied. He wasn't working there anymore. Which meant that whatever he was doing now, it had nothing to do with a real job. No company. No income. No reason to be in my mom's life. Except for her. And maybe, her money. I stared at that email for a long time. My chest felt tight, like my lungs had been swapped out for stone. It was the confirmation I didn't want but completely expected. Ethan wasn't working. He wasn't networking. He wasn't building some new life with my mom because he'd grown up or changed. He was freeloading. Manipulating. Lying. Everything he was doing, playing the sweet boyfriend, the doting man who just wanted to start over, was fake. It had always been fake. And now my mom, who hadn't let a single man into her life since my dad died, was about to fall headfirst into a trap. So I did what I said I would do. I collected it all. The screenshots of their messages that had backed up to her laptop without her realizing. The texts between me and Ethan from last year, The ones where he'd sent me the same compliments he was now using on her. The receipt for the bracelet. Photos of him kissing her outside that cafe. The email from the agency. And the kicker? A bank transfer. Small, but suspicious. My mom had moved $1,000 to an account with a name I didn't recognize. I looked it up. It was in Ethan's brother's name. It wasn't a gift. It was a test run. See how much he could get. I put it all in a folder. Labeled it "Read This." And I left it open on her laptop one night before I went to bed. I didn't sleep. Just stared at the ceiling, listening to the silence of our house. At 2:17 a.m. I heard her door open. Footsteps. Then nothing. Silence again. But the next morning? Everything had changed. She was already in the kitchen when I woke up. Pale. Quiet. Still wearing her robe, hair a mess, eyes puffy. She didn't look angry. She looked defeated. She told me she canceled their weekend plans. Said she needed some space. Didn't look at me when she said it. I didn't ask questions. I just nodded. Because deep down, I knew what she hadn't told me yet. She knew it was true. And she just didn't want to admit it. Not yet. The silence in the house after that was deafening. She didn't bring up Ethan again. Didn't text him. Didn't cry where I could hear it, but something in her was gone. Like she'd yanked the plug out of her own chest and let the numbness do the rest. She never said you were right. She didn't have to. I waited. I gave her space. I didn't throw it in her face, didn't demand apologies or explanations. I just let her sit in it. Let her feel it for herself. Because I knew if I pushed too hard, she'd find a way to defend him. That's what people do when they're embarrassed by their own choices. 3 days later, he came by. Middle of the afternoon, like it was a normal visit. I was upstairs, and I heard his voice before I even heard the knock. Like he was already sure the door would open for him. It didn't. She didn't even answer. Just waited until he stopped knocking. I stayed upstairs, watching from my window as he stood there looking confused, then annoyed, then calm again. Like he thought this was just a little bump. Like he'd smooth it over with charm and empty words. He stood on the porch for another 5 minutes. Then he walked away. And I thought that was the end. But of course it wasn't. That night, my mom handed me her phone and asked me to read a message. She couldn't do it herself. I think she knew if she read his words in her own voice, they might still feel real. It was a long message. Pages, basically. He called me vindictive. Accused me of ruining something beautiful. Said I was jealous that my mom found someone who made her happy. Then came the real motive. He said he was counting on her support because his car had been towed, and he didn't have enough right now to get it back. And that, more than anything else, finally broke whatever was left of the illusion. She didn't cry. She just shook her head and whispered, "He was using me." I didn't say anything. What do you say when someone finally sees the truth they've been avoiding? The next morning, she blocked him. Changed the locks. Deleted every photo. But what hit me most wasn't just her sadness, it was the guilt. The look on her face when she realized she hadn't just fallen for a lie, but that she'd invited that lie into our lives. Into my life. She apologized. Not with some dramatic speech. Just one sentence, late at night, while we were both sitting on the couch pretending to watch TV. I should have known better. I'm sorry I didn't protect you from him. That was enough. That was everything. It's been 2 weeks now. The house feels lighter. She's been painting again. I've been sleeping better. We haven't talked about Ethan since. And as for him? He hasn't tried to come back. He probably moved on to someone else by now. Someone with a soft heart and a decent savings account. But if you're out there reading this, and somehow this reaches you, just know, I saw through you long before she did. And next time? I won't just be watching. I'll be ready.